Hey guys, Ike here from Mike'sOutdoors.com. In today's video, I'm going to show you 5 things you should never do with a compound bow. Okay, these 5 tips are things that you need to do to a compound bow to 1, not tear it up, and 2, there are other things that you should do for safety reasons. Number 1 is do not dry fire a bow. And what we mean by dry fire a bow when we say that is that you do not shoot it without an arrow in it. I heard an interesting story on Archery Talks forum a few years ago. Guy was in customer service and someone called him and asked him how long he should soak his bow before he shot it. He thought that dry firing a bow meant that he needed to soak it in water before he shot it to keep it lubricated, I guess. So that was a pretty interesting, pretty funny story, but dry firing is basically shooting a bow without an arrow. What will happen is all that energy that transfers to the arrow to launch it will transfer to your cams, your cables, your string, your limbs, and your riser. And a lot of times it will, at least the very minimum, derail most of the time, where the string will pop off the cam. But more often than not, you end up with a cracked or damaged limb, and your strings and cables can be messed up pretty bad too. So you're talking significant repair on your boat if you can repair it. Most of the time you can get parts for them, but if it's an older bow, sometimes you can't. So sometimes you can't even repair them after that's over. Number 2, associated with dry firing a bow, and that is never draw a bow back without an arrow in it. I see people do this all the time. They'll walk into a shop, and this is why you see bow shops with zip ties and safety equipment on their bows to keep them from being drawn back. And that is because if you draw it back without an arrow in it and something slips, there's a pretty good chance you're going to dry fire that bow. So never draw a bow back without an arrow in it. Number 3 is never Skydraw a bow, and I'm going to show you guys the bow here that I'm going to be doing a review on. This is the Gearhead bow, and I may need to lean back. Luckily this bow is pretty short. What we mean by Skydraw is instead of just pulling the bow straight while it's aimed at the target the whole time, you see guys that they're going like this and they're pulling with their bow back and then they're coming down onto the target. That is very, very dangerous, and if you have to draw a bow like that, then you probably have too much draw weight, and you need to get your draw weight down to a manageable draw weight. And it's not only dangerous because when you get that bow back like that, what happens if you touch that trigger off? Well, that arrow is going to go God knows where. And actually heard a story about a professional archer at a shoot. Actually someone did that and he got shot, and the arrow came down and hit him right in the pocket where his cell phone was, and luckily his cell phone kept it from going into his leg. But it can be very, very dangerous. The other thing is you don't want to be doing that in a tree stand with a deer underneath you. You want to be able to point the bow at the tree stand and pull that bow right back and make a nice, smooth, clean draw so that it doesn't spook the deer. So don't sky draw your bow. Number 4 is something that you don't see a lot. I don't see a lot anymore. Used to see a lot of guys do it, but this is probably more commonly known now. A lot of guys in the past their cams would get to making noise, get to squeaking, I guess. I don't know what the problem was with them, but they would put WD-40 on them to lubricate them up, and maybe they were lubricating the bearings in there. This is a tale that I heard a lot when I was in an archery shop, working in an archery shop. Never actually seen it, but apparently guys would put WD-40 on their cams to keep them from squeaking and get them to roll smoother, I guess. You do not want to get WD-40 anywhere near these strings and cables. WD-40 will eat these strings and cables off of your bow and cause them to break down, and they will break. So you should not WD-40 any parts of your bow. The only part of my bow that I actually will lubricate now, and I don't do it very often, some of the older slides on these bows, most of them have really good Teflon slides now. Occasionally you get one of these slides that just wouldn't slide very good. It would kind of catch as it drew back. And the cable rod, the guide rods are better now. They got a better coating on them. I would put some string wax, some bow wax on there so that would slide back on that cable slide or cable guard a little bit better. But that's about all the lubrication I would do. I wouldn't lubricate my cams or my limb pockets or anything like that unless I was doing a complete teardown on a bow. So don't get WD-40 anywhere near your, or what's the other one I heard someone used on anything like WD-40, where it's gonna penetrate and it's gonna end up eating your strings off your bow and can really mess your bow up and hurt you. The last tip that I have for you is do not back your limbs out more than what the manufacturer says. Now, sometimes you can get, sometimes if they say, you know, it's a 50 to 60 pound bow, sometimes you can get it down to 48, you know, but if they say that these limbs are meant to be backed out 5 turns, 6 turns, 8 turns, whatever it is, do not back them out more than that. Most of these newer bows are really nice, and you can see the bolt in there and see how much you have left in there. But if you're backing these limbs out and those bolts come loose, you are going to have an explosion on your hands. It's going to be worse than dry firing a bow. It can hurt you, and it can scare the bejesus out of you. It is, excuse me, it's not something that is good for your bow or for you. It's probably going to tear something up when that limb lets go. So only back those out the number that the manufacturer recommends. If you don't have your book, watch that bolt right there and be really careful to leave enough of that bolt in there that it is not going to rip those threads out and take that limb pocket and those limbs off of there. These bows are under a tremendous amount of pressure, and they're really quality built. Most bows today are, even the low end, the low tier bows are quality built bows, and they've got a lot of good good machining and things like that put into them. But if you back that out to where it's only got a couple threads holding, and this thing's a 70-pound bow, you know, you're still holding a lot of poundage on there, and it can rip those things right out. So those are the 5 tips that I have for you not to do to a compound bow. Another one that I see a lot, and this is not a compound bow, this is a traditional bow, which you should probably not do any of those things to a traditional bow either. But I see guys occasionally, and I saw one, a guy did this to a custom-made recurve that was actually beautiful. If you have a recurve or a longbow, do not stick it in the corner like this where all the weight is on one of the limbs. That will cause that limb to twist, and it will really affect that traditional bow. And I saw a guy do that to a guy locally who made some beautiful longbows. And one of the guys that he had in a shop, he had this bow in a shop trying to sell it, and the owner of the shop had it sitting in the corner on the limb. And when I got there and picked it up, that bottom limb was just twisted. Now, they can be fixed, but it's hard to fix them, and sometimes you can't get that twist all the way out of there. So traditional bow guys should probably do the first 5 of these as well for safety's sake and to keep your bow intact. But definitely do not leave your bow standing on its limb. You should hang it. I always hung my traditional bows by the riser like this. So those are the tips that I have for you guys. Hope this video helps you guys out. And if you want to see a review on this gearhead bow, this is a bow that I'm going to be doing a review on probably next week. So I'll launch this video this week, and then we'll be doing a review on this gearhead next week. I've had it for a few days and been shooting it and absolutely loving this little thing right now. So check back with us for a full in-depth review on this Gearhead Pro, or Gearhead Disruptor Pro 24. So we'll be doing that next week. Check back with us, and until then, you can follow us on social media, on Instagram and Facebook under Ike's Outdoors. And please be sure to like, subscribe, and share these videos. That really does help us out quite a bit when you do that. And until next time, I appreciate you guys watching.